So there's a couple interesting things about this. I've just taken one side of it off. One is, there's the return spring. So that when you have this on here, it's all the way back so that it pulls itself back in. The next interesting thing is, normally when you pull it back, it would pull back that piston with it, and then it would return, and then you would fire. But why is it so that this thing can ratchet back to catch the piston again? When would that happen? Well, it turns out that if you pull it all the way back while holding the trigger, which I'm not doing now, but I am doing now, that it fires when it gets all the way back, and so it needs to catch again. So that's the slam fire feature. And then something else interesting happens when the piston moves forward. I don't know if I'll be able to fit it in frame this time. The barrel rotates after the piston moves forward to switch to the next barrel. Well, I got it apart. Let's try this. So there's a bunch of springs in here. There was one right here, which held up the little catch for the accessory you put on top. It's shaped like this. There's this one by the trigger. There's this one. There's this one. There's the one on the other side of this, which we saw earlier, which returns that. There's one in here in the piston. There's this one, which is really annoying. This piece likes to come up and come out. What this piece does is when you pull this back, it pulls back the piston, and the piston locks on here until you pull the trigger. If you were holding the trigger down, then the piston would just go back right away. Another interesting piece is right here. This one has a ratchet so that when it moves, it rotates the cylinders. So that's how the cylinders rotate. This piece here, oh, that one's taking off again. When the cylinder isn't in all the way, this one gets pushed back out, so you can push it in and not. And when I was playing with it, I found that the piston doesn't catch, or something else doesn't happen when that button's not being pressed. There's also something special with this button, but I'm not going to take the piston apart far enough to do that. So what this and that conspire together to do is make it so that when you pull it back while holding the trigger, while the barrel's not in all the way, nothing happens. So yeah, this piece moving up and down also gives you the indicator of whether the piston's cocked back or not, out this little hole right here. But anyway, what I was looking for is a way to tell the current position of the piston, so it looks like there might be enough room in there, but I don't know how I'll be able to get anything out. So something interesting I noticed when firing this before, so one way to notice this really obviously is to pull this out a little bit. You don't have to take it apart. Hold this button in and fire, is that the piston will jump out by like 1/8 of an inch. And it looks like that was quite intentional. Yeah, whatever, I'll put that back later. Because of this spring right here, the whole piston can move. So I expect what happens is that the spring in here, as it's pushing the piston through the cylinder, also pushes the cylinder out and forces the seal here up against your chamber. So I guess I lied. I decided to take the piston out, and let's look at it some more. So there's a little spring that pushes this thing back into place, and it acts as a seal. And then we have the piston and the spring, and then that's just an O-ring with a little grease on it. And then there's not much else going on in there. So, and then this end has a little plastic leaf spring right there, so that this can go up and down. But there's not much more interesting happening here. There's this shape which goes on the bottom side in that groove right there. There's this shape which goes into the spring slot we saw earlier. Yeah, I expect what's going on with the thing over here is so that when you pull it all the way back and there's no, this isn't pushing this end back in, as in there's probably not a dart in there, so that this doesn't go all the way down and slam really hard and break things. So as you heard, it'll let the air out more slowly. Interesting.